Hello and welcome back, goats, to the BigBluePurple channel. Today I have a bit of a different video that I've been wanting to make. I want to talk about the Endwalker patches and my thoughts on them so far, since it's been kind of a hotly discussed topic in the community lately. I don't really have any kind of script or notes for this one. I just want to talk about how I'm feeling about the patch content off the cuff, and hopefully start a discussion with you guys and see how everyone else is feeling, since the community's kind of all over the place right now in, what I'm seeing people saying. I also just want to preface this by saying I am by no means bored of 14 right now. I want to make that clear because I'm coming from a bit of a different perspective than a lot of the other creators talking about this right now who have been playing the game for several years, and so the content drought is affecting them a lot more than it's going to affect someone like me. That being said, I still think there is some issues with this patch content, and there's a lot of things I'd like to see them improve upon and change, so I wanted to make this video hopefully as a fair criticism towards the Endwalker patch content, and just talk about what I enjoy about 14, and why I feel like that's been lacking in the newest patches. So first, I want to talk about the relic, because I've already made a video kind of complaining about the current relic and why I don't like it, but I want to basically expand on that a bit, because I said a few things in that video that I want to backpedal on now. The most notable thing is when I was complaining about the relic, I said it didn't really matter that there was no field exploration zone. I wasn't very upset about that. I was more so just upset that there's literally no grind involved. For reference now, I have 7 or 8 completed relics, and I haven't actively worked on any of them. Like, I've just completed 8 because I've capped homes and then gone and bought the shit to keep making relics. It's not really a rewarding experience, and I can't actively log on and be like, oh, I want to work on a relic today, because honestly, it's just not an efficient use of my time. It's better for me to go, oh, I need to go capped homes this week, and then all of a sudden I have enough to buy a relic. Either way, my perspective from before, saying it didn't really matter that we didn't have a field exploration zone, was coming from the perspective of someone who still had an entire field exploration zone I didn't do yet. I haven't touched Zadnor at all. I've done Baja, I've done Delubrum, but as soon as I unlocked Zadnor, I haven't been in there yet. I haven't really touched it at all. I'm kind of waiting until I feel like doing that. And so I've realized my perspective was kind of skewed because I don't have to worry about the lack of a field exploration zone. I already have one left over. And for many players, that's not the case at all. I see now that a huge part of what was keeping me playing 14 over the course of the year was this field exploration content that I didn't do when it was current, specifically Eureka. I spent so many hours in Eureka because it felt like that content was like tailor-made for someone like me. Unlike a lot of other content in this game, there's no waiting around for other people, there's no queuing for anything. You just load into Eureka and you do whatever the hell you want. You set achievable goals on what you want to work towards within Eureka, and then you're able to work on those things and see consistent progress while you're in there. It just had a gameplay loop that really satisfied me, and I realize now that because there's not a new version of that in Endwalker, a lot of people who are really satisfied by that gameplay loop and want more of that are basically starving this expansion. There's nothing in Endwalker that's anything remotely close to that. In fact, Endwalker content, like patch content from Endwalker, has specifically felt very contained and like isolated from the rest of the game and from the rest of the players as well. You look at variant dungeons, and that's either a solo thing or you can do it with 4 people. You look at Eureka Orthos, that's either a solo thing or you can do it with 4 people. You look at Island Sanctuary, that's a solo thing. You look at Criterion, it's only 4 people. All of the content we've gotten in Endwalker that isn't raiding is really low-man stuff or soloable stuff. And I don't think it's bad to have these options and avenues of content in the game, but I feel like they've been detracting from having actual MMO-feeling content in an MMO, which is a little bit concerning to me. Additionally, it doesn't feel like there's a whole lot of grindable content in the game right now that isn't older stuff that if you've already done it, you're kinda screwed. Everything's on a weekly logout, everything's on a weekly cap. The game only lets you play it as much as the game wants you to be able to play it, and a lot of the times that's really frustrating, and in the past it seemed like the relic and this other content they'd add through patches, like the exploration zones, were the remedy to that. There was still something that was essentially infinitely grindable after you hit all your weekly caps. You may be thinking, well, Criterion is infinitely grindable, and for fucking what? What are you grinding Criterion for? Materia? The mount that you can buy off the market board instead of actually playing the content? There's no proper rewards from Criterion, and this is a whole other discussion that has been talked about so much. I don't need to really add to that. Eureka Orthos is arguably a grindable piece of content, I guess. It's just not really my thing, but I'm glad that Deep Dungeon enjoyers have that, because I do think Deep Dungeon's a really cool part of the game, and I want to see them continue to expand upon it and maybe delve a little bit more into the roguelike elements. Just thinking about it, I'd love to see, like, you know, in the roguelike games, when you complete a level or you level up or whatever, you get to pick between, like, 3 different abilities in, like, Hades or whatever. It'd be really cool if there was a version of that in Deep Dungeon where, like, you level up and now you get to pick an enhancement for one of your abilities that makes it, like, do something new. I imagine that would be a whole lot of effort to create and stuff, but it would be super interesting as a player. Either way, I would say Deep Dungeon is good, and I'm glad we got another one this expansion. I just hope going forward they maybe continue to innovate upon it a little bit more than they have been. Another piece of Endwalker content we've gotten is Island Sanctuary, which is quite literally solo-only content. Your friend can come to your island, which is a carbon copy of their island, so I don't really know why they'd even bother. Outdoor furnishing was a good step in the right direction for Island Sanctuary for people who care about that kind of thing. That's not really for me, but I can recognize how valuable that is to certain people. The problem I have with Island Sanctuary is that it focuses too much on its weakest element, in my opinion, which is the workshop. The workshop is the fastest way to level, or the most efficient way to level, I guess not the fastest, and everything you do in the island basically just goes back to the workshop. And if you don't like the workshop, because it's literally just, like, basically managing a work schedule or like a spreadsheet for your mammoths, if you don't enjoy that kind of management sim shit, you're not gonna really enjoy Island Sanctuary, because that's the meat of the gameplay. It's sad because the beginning of Island Sanctuary, when you're first starting out and you're gaining XP really fast and you're building all these new buildings, there's this really nice sense of progression going on with how the island is expanding, and I like that. But once you hit a certain point, I would say like halfway through the leveling process, you level so unbelievably slow through doing anything on the island that it's actively more efficient to, like, set up your workshop for the week, log off the game, come back a week later, and all of a sudden you've leveled up 3 times. And it's just like, it feels like the content is actively saying, hey, don't play me. Like, don't play this content. It's a waste of your time. It'd actually be way faster if you didn't play the content and still got all the rewards because you used the workshop. I think the workshop is fine for people who don't want to play the content and just want to passively max out Island Sanctuary, but the problem is that if you're someone who wants to grind Island Sanctuary and like just really spend a lot of time in it, it feels like the game is actively kind of punishing you for doing so. You only get 10 XP per node, it takes an absurdly long time to level just by mining nodes. It feels like a spit in the face to anyone who actually wants to play the content, which is just really, really weird design to me. And it doesn't help when so many other things on this game are on an arbitrary weekly timer, a weekly lockout, or just something that stops you from doing it more than 1 time per week, or per day, or whatever. It's not like you can finish your weeklies and be like, okay, well, I guess I'll go grind out Island Sanctuary now because I have nothing else to do. Well, no, because Island Sanctuary is also just a weekly that has been added on top of the other weeklies. I think it just feels really bad when you're paying a sub to a video game. I mean, I've probably paid more for Final Fantasy XIV than I've paid for any other video game that I play because I have to keep buying it over and over and over again. Yet despite me paying for the privilege to even log on to the game, it feels like the game doesn't want me to log on to it, or if it does, it just wants me to log on, do a roulette, do my Savage weeklies, and then get off for the week. Again though, this is just the way I'm seeing it from the perspective of someone who isn't bored with the game. I log on and I have plenty of things to grind out still that I'm interested in. I have 3 more ultimate raids for God's sake. I have plenty to do. But for most people who have been playing for several years, that's not the case. And these constantly, like, just intrusive weekly timers on when you can and can't do things in a game that you are paying monthly for feels so bad. It just feels bad. I guess this is also a good time to complain about the Savage lockout lasting as long as it does. I feel like Savage should just be unlocked after 6.5 comes out. Like, the patch after Savage comes out, Savage should be unlocked. I feel like that makes a lot of sense, but for some reason it doesn't get unlocked until 6.58, which is going to be so far from now. probably not until like March, if I had to guess. What is the point of just arbitrarily locking Savage Gear to once a week when the tier has already been out for like fucking 7 months? You have to wait 9 months for them to unlock the tier? What is Square so afraid of with people getting Savage Gear faster? Do they realize that without these weekly limits, people would just stop paying their sub because there's nothing else to do? Part of me just feels like a lot of the decisions made in this game feel really predatory when you look into it. Speaking of predatory things, I mean, housing is the absolute prime example of that in my opinion. I don't care about the technical limitations. I'm gonna be real with you guys. It's bullshit that you lose your house if you don't log in for 30 days. They know what they're doing. It's predatory on purpose. They're trying to keep you paying so that they keep making money off you even if you're not doing anything in the goddamn game. And this isn't some grand conspiracy, it's just a fact. Companies aren't your friend. I'm coming from Destiny 2. I know all about predatory decisions, and I'm not trying to say 14 is anywhere near as bad as Destiny 2 is, but it scares me that this game could continue moving in the wrong direction if they keep getting greedier and greedier. I mean, look at the goddamn Mog store now. It's getting like a new item less than a month apart from each other, and meanwhile Blue Mages didn't get a single reward for completing the new fucking Savage Raids as Blue. You get a title, no mounts, no minion. Like, you complete the Blue Mage log, you get nothing. Like, there's actual content in the game that actively needs rewards, and then meanwhile, there's rewards being added on the cash shop constantly. One of the most annoying perspectives I've seen on this is people saying, like, oh, just play the content for fun. Like, why do you need a reward for everything that you do in the game? I don't know, maybe because it's a fucking MMO and you want things to chase and carrots on sticks are what get people into content in the first place. Have you considered that maybe Blue Mage raiding would be a lot more alive if there was a worthwhile reward for engaging with it? I don't know, man. I guess to sum everything up and to make the point that I'm trying to make, the issue I'm having with the game right now, or I see with the game right now, not even necessarily that I'm having, but that I'm seeing with the game, is that the new Endwalker patch content isn't very grindable or repeatable. You don't log on to run Criterion 20 times in one day, like nobody's doing that. You don't log on to grind Island Sanctuary because the game punishes you for doing so. It would be way more efficient for you to log off and come back in a week. This issue, combined with the fact that all of the other major stuff you can chase in the game is put on a weekly lockout. Savage can only be done once a week. Tomes can only be capped at 450 once a week, which is just a whole other level of fucking bullshit. Like, don't even get me started on the tomes. There are 19 jobs in this game, and you're telling me I can only get 450 tomes a week? Like, what? And then you have some idiot say like, oh, well, you don't need to gear up every job, like, what's the point, man? Because achieving things in a video game is fun. Chasing items is fun. That's why we play MMOs. That's why we play games with loot systems, is to chase the loot. How hard is it to understand that? And I'm not here to say that every single person needs to play that way. There's tons of ways to play 14 that don't involve chasing anything. You can just get on and go to venues and RP and shit if that's what you like, and I think that's great. The point I'm trying to make is that for someone who wants to grind things out, they don't really have the option at all to do so, and it feels really stupid in an MMO where grinding for a lot of us is what we enjoy doing the most. I just don't see what would be so bad about people being able to gear up more than one job more efficiently. If you just either doubled the tome cap or reduced the cost of gear by half, or whatever to remedy this, I don't understand the point of the weekly lockout other than to just make you keep paying your sub. That's literally the only justification I can see for it, which isn't a fair justification. It's predatory as fuck. But to be honest with you, I don't think there's anyone to argue with about the tome cap. I think most people are in agreement that the tome cap is really bad. If someone in the comments wants to fight with me on this, then go for it. It's going to be a losing battle. But all in all, I say all of this out of my love for 14. This is probably my favorite video game ever. I've invested more time into 14 than I've invested in any other video game that I've ever played. It's just when you invest that much time into a video game, the cracks really start to show. And I'm not sitting here saying you can't enjoy the game because it has problems. I'm saying these problems exist, and if they fix them, the game would be even better than it already is. I don't know how that's a controversial thing to want. At the end of the day, though, the weekly caps and shit that I'm complaining about has been an issue for every single expansion. That's not a post-Endwalker complaint. It's a complaint that I've had with this entire game that I had considered making its own video about, but I feel like this is just a kind of a good video to talk about every issue that I'm having with the game right now and how I feel like they could remedy that. Interestingly enough, I see a lot of people saying that 14's biggest problem are how cookie cutter the patches are, I guess. You always know what you're getting, right? You always know what day the patch is coming out. You always know exactly what's going to be in the patch, and there's never an element of surprise. And I can see why this would be a problem when you've been playing for such a long time. However, I've noticed that a lot of the problems people do have with Endwalker are actually a result of them breaking that cycle. We were expecting another field exploration zone because we've been getting them consistently since Heaven's Ward. I'm pretty sure Diadem used to be that, even if it was shit. So that's 3 expansions in a row that had field exploration, and now we didn't get one. And for the last 3 expansions, we also got involved relic grinds. And for the first time, we didn't get one of those. So a lot of the major things that I feel like are bothering me the most about the patch content are actually changes that they made to a formula that was otherwise working. Now, I'm not saying that following this super rigid patch cycle is a perfect formula and they should never innovate on it or anything like that. I'm just saying I don't think that's what the core issue of Endwalker is, even though some people are citing it as such. Ultimately, for me though, I'm just grateful that there's a bunch of old content in the game that is very grindable and is very rewarding. It's just kind of telling, I guess. I mean, if you look at my entire channel and you look at the things I've covered on this channel, a lot of it is not Endwalker stuff. In fact, most of it is not Endwalker stuff. The only stuff from Endwalker I really talked about was the trials. The content that ended up sucking me into it was actually mostly from Stormblood and Shadowbringers. Stuff like Eureka, stuff like the Morble raids for Blue Mage, that was Stormblood. Stuff like the relics from Heaven's Ward, A Realm Reborn, and Stormblood, and eventually Shadowbringers when I get to that one as well. You know, when you're a newer player in this game, there's an absolute mountain of content to go through. It feels like it'll never end. And I guess what I'm realizing now with post-Endwalker is that that content doesn't get added very quickly. And for a sub-based game where I need to pay $12.99 a month to continue to play it, it feels like the new stuff isn't justifying that sub fee, but the old stuff is, which is fine for someone like me and fine for many of us because we haven't caught up on all that stuff. But eventually, when you're fully caught up, then what's going to keep you logging in? Speaking of the sub fee, another thing that irritates me quite a bit with something I've seen around all this discourse with the patches is people saying, oh, you should be grateful this game gets patches so frequently. There's games that haven't been updated in years. Yeah, those games that haven't been updated in years, you're not paying monthly for them now, are you? I don't know, it just kind of falls flat as soon as you realize you have to continuously pay for this game. Like, I would hope that content is being consistently added. That's kind of the given. It almost feels like people are so deep into 14 now, they've literally forgotten that they're paying for it. But with all that being said, I think I've kind of touched upon everything that's been on my mind with the state of the game right now. I felt like it was worth chiming into this discussion because I just had a lot of my own thoughts that are nice to vocalize in one way or another. I'm kind of in a nice position not having to worry about burnout or boredom when I still have plenty to do, and instead I can kind of watch other people get bored and burnt out and say, oh, I can see why that's happening, and if I was playing this game for 4 years instead of 2, I would likely be in the exact same position. Unfortunately, this community takes criticism really poorly, at least from what I've seen. Worse than other games I've played, interestingly enough. Like, Destiny 2 is a game that's got a lot of fucking problems and needs a lot of criticism. And while there is, like, the Bungie dick riders who sit there and fucking defend Bungie with their lives, for the most part, the community is very open to criticizing the game and genuinely offers what they think could be improved upon. In 14, it seems like all sorts of discussion like this, people just immediately write it off as people, like, attacking the devs or, like, fucking shitting on their favorite game or something, when in reality, it's like, this is my favorite game too, man. I'm telling you, it would be better if they changed some stuff. And also, this isn't to say that all the post-Endwalker content has been bad or anything. It's just, it doesn't have longevity or replayability, and that's its real problem. I actually think Criterion is really good content, and they should keep making it, but not at the expense of not having repeatable content. Looking ahead to Dawntrail, though, I'm pretty optimistic that they'll improve upon a lot of these criticisms they're receiving. I feel like with the Relic, they have to hear us, you know? I don't think they're going to do the Tome Relic ever again. Instead, I think they're going to try to find some sort of middle ground. And I also think a field exploration zone is pretty much guaranteed for the next expansion with how much outcry there's been with the lack of such a zone. You know, maybe I'll be wrong about this. Maybe Dawn Trail is going to be the absolute worst expansion they've ever made, and this game is going down the shitter and we're done, like people on the official forums seem to think. You know, I'm not so cynical yet. My criticisms come from a place of truly believing that this game will continue to get better because the devs really do care about the product they're making. Again, comparing to Destiny 2, which was my main game for the longest time, the devs of that game don't give a fuck what the players want. They ignore the players, they remove content because it reduces the file size, and that's a good idea for them. Imagine 14, like, just removed Uwu and UCOB because, like, oh, it's old Ultimates, like, people don't care anymore, like, we'll just take that out for file size. Can you imagine if they did that in this game? No, because they never fucking would. They actually care about their content. But comparing to other games is also kind of a dangerous, slippery slope where you can be like, oh, well, at least we're not WoW. At least we don't have to play for 14 hours a day to make any progress. It's like, don't set the bar at WoW, please. Like, let's have some standards, guys. And I'm mostly joking. I've never played WoW, and I don't know if it's good or bad. I'm just taking some shots for fun. I would probably be the type of person to enjoy WoW with how much I like grinding things. Anyway, this video has gone on for way too long. As you can see, I'm really passionate about this game. I love it, and I really like talking about it. So please, have some discussions in the comments. If you disagree with me, you know, let me know, and be reasonable about it. Don't be a fucking jackass. I'm just really curious to see how you guys are feeling about all this stuff. I imagine a decent chunk of my audience is from the relic content that I've made, the relic videos and stuff. So I'd be curious to see, you know, how that portion of the player base is all feeling when probably a huge part of the game for them just isn't here this expansion. Otherwise, let me know what you guys have been doing to keep busy in the game if you're not doing Endwalker content. For me right now, I've been chasing all of the triple triad cards. I'm about just over halfway done with it now. So hopefully I can finish that up in the next month or so. I'm also kind of slowly progging DSR on and off. I haven't been going as hard on it as I did on the other two ultimates, because honestly, Party Finder has just got me kind of exhausted lately, and I haven't been as motivated to just sit in there for hours. So for me, it's ultimates and kind of old, grindy stuff, like, you know, get all the triple triad cards. I've gotten another Zodiac weapon, and I want to make a guide on that for you guys. And I'd probably want to get every single Zodiac weapon eventually, because it is an actual grind in the game that I can do. So yeah, all in all, let me know how you're feeling. What are you doing in the game right now to keep yourself busy? Are you happy with all the new Endwalker stuff? Are you unhappy with it? Are you kind of just indifferent? Let me know. With all said and done, remember to drop a like on the video, but only if you did, and subscribe to the BigBluePurple channel if you're not already. I make near weekly-ish Final Fantasy XIV content. Let me know if you enjoyed this more kind of discussion content. Usually I cover something I've completed in the game and talk about my experience doing that, but content like that isn't necessarily sustainable is something that I'm starting to realize a bit. Eventually I will run out of content, and on top of that, it takes a long amount of time for me to complete a lot of content in this game. So making discussions like this would allow me to upload probably a lot more frequently. Just putting that out there. I want to get some opinions. Let me know if you like this kind of content or if you don't. Thanks again for watching, and I will catch you in the next one.